across America. Live, this is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for Point of View. This is a different topic today, and the question I have for you is, do you own a business, and is that business more than a job for you? Do you have a family that you care a lot about? Now, you may work for a business. You probably are a member of a family. So with all of that, I think you're going to enjoy today's program. We're going to be talking about families and business owners and how they go together, how they embrace one another and enhance one another. And we're going to be talking about a new book. I have its author in studio with me, and it's called The Braveheart Exit. We're going to delve into something that my guest calls the Braveheart Plan, and I think you're going to love this. Randy Long is my guest. He is CEO of Long Business Advisors, LLC. He's an author and a speaker. He's also a founding member of a group called wealthcouncil.com. He's got lots of credentials. He's a certified financial planner and a certified exit planner. We'll tell you what that is. And he's also got a JD degree. He's creator of the Braveheart planning process, and he's also a board member for our friend Ted Barrett Movie Guide and the father of 5. And Randy, thank you so much for being in the studio with me.
Good. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you. I've known Randy for quite a while, and I knew about most of the credentials, but not all. So happy to see the book. I know that it came out officially yesterday, so we're honored to have you here at Point of View.
Good. It's good to be here.
Randy, I want to just start by talking. Your book is called The Braveheart Exit, and it really has to do with how to exit a business in a good way.
Right.
But I want to start first with this Braveheart idea, this plan for Braveheart. It is so intriguing, and it's sort of a plan for your life, in a sense. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so the basic Braveheart plan, if you will, for our family is built upon 3 primary principles. One of them is faith in Jesus Christ and in His Word. That's the foundational one. The second one is the idea of family being very important. So that is development of the family, spending time with the family, prioritizing it. And then the third one has to do with freedom, and that is the freedom of work, freedom of opportunity, freedom to learn, freedom to grow, and all of that freedom kind of works really well with self-employment.
Yeah, it does. What is this term Braveheart? I mean, we know it from history, but is this the leader of the family and the leader of the business? Is that the Braveheart?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the term Braveheart for me has to do with the fact that I think it takes guts to be in business, that there are a lot of things that a business owner has to go out and do every day. He or she goes out and faces the world. You've got to eat what you kill, if you will. You've got to take risk. You've got to see the future. You've got to plan. You've got to strategize, and you've got to work hard. So it's not the average life of an employee, and so it's a different way to approach life.
One of the things that you mention in the book about the Braveheart is that he puts the needs of his family before his own.
Yeah, he does. Family is really very important, and the whole idea of being self-employed, from my perspective, is to benefit the family. It gives us the opportunity to bring our kids into the business, to teach them, to help them to grow. It gives them opportunity. It gives us opportunity to do things with them, with our time, with our talents, with our energy. And it allows us to continue to give them our culture, to teach them our culture, if you will, because as owners and as prioritizing a family, we typically like homeschooling. Our children, my wife homeschooled our children, 4 of the 5 anyway, through the 8th grade. The younger one went to Christian school a little earlier. But the idea that we had the chance to spend time with them and opportunity to do things with them was a really big deal. And so that drove the desire to be self-employed, and self-employed provides also income and things that it's very hard to earn separately, as an employee, frankly.
Having your children within your business, sort of grooming them, growing them up in the business, it sounds ideal, but I know also that it takes a lot of work. There are a lot of challenges involved. You're having to think not only about your business, but also about that person that you love, is your child, that is there working with you. And so I'm sure there's some pressures there.
Yeah, there are. Being with family more than most people are, of course, it gives you opportunities to grow, to teach them, to learn with them, to share things. And the more you share, of course, the more you grow close and the more you get them to learn and to understand who you are and what's important to you. And that's how we transfer culture. It's very hard to do that when you allow other people, whether it's the government or other people, to spend most of your children's lives with them instead of with you. So
I was surprised to learn from the book, Randy, that the number of really companies across the country that are providing work and providing our GDP are family-owned. I mean, there are many more of them than most people, I think, would think.
Yes, that's very true. As a matter of fact, America really became a powerhouse in the 17th and 18th century because so many of its business owners were self-employed. I mean, we were small business owners. The whole country, by and large, had a family, and they were in a certain trade or a certain business, and that opportunity really didn't exist in the rest of the world. And so as a result of the U.S. being full of all these self-employed people, we grew a middle class that the world has not normally seen. And the strength of the country also grew as the families grew. And the self-employment part of it also, it brought the family closer together because you were working with your children and your economic future was tied with theirs. So, being self-employed was a great way to build the country. And of course, the fact that we were self-employed gave us a chance to inculcate our faith into them too, because that was part of, as we walk along, the Bible talks about, walking along with your children, teaching them as you go, and you can do that when you're with them all day.
Well, many of the challenges of life that hit the head of the family, say the dad or the mom who's out in the working world, the kids are insulated from that. They don't see it. They don't see how you handle it, how you react to it. When you're working together, you do see that. My family has a small business, and my son is there, and he sees that. I've often wondered if he's seeing good or bad, in a sense, when he sees the reaction and the way some of this is handled. But, as a family, you do see each other, warts and all, and it's a good time to teach one another and encourage one another in dependence on the Lord. Well, this book is the Braveheart Exit. After the break, we are going to jump right into it and get more deeply into the mechanics of the book. It's 7 steps to your family business legacy. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about leaving a legacy. We all want to leave a godly legacy to our families. And so if you are in business and if you own one, it's a good opportunity, whether your children are involved in your business with you or even if they're not, it's still a good opportunity to use that business to leave a legacy not only to them but also to the culture. But there are ways to do it. And if you are building a business, there's a time in your life when you're going to leave it, whether it's suddenly, which we hope not, or whether it's gradually and you have more control over it. But either way, you ought to, if you're wise, you ought to be preparing for that day. And that is what Randy Long is all about. He helps people do that, and he's written about it. And we'll talk about it right after this.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter, and I'm so glad to have in studio Randy Long, and he's written a book. It just came out yesterday, The Braveheart Exit, 7 Steps to Your Family Business Legacy. Randy is a strong believer. He's raised 5 children with his godly wife, Lydia. They have a successful business, and he's all about helping people structure their businesses so that they succeed and also so they can exit well. Here's just a quote from somebody who read this book, and somebody I know well and has sort of followed some of this, and I'm sure will benefit from this book. His name is Rich Bott. Bott Radio Network carried Point of View for many years, and he says, as a third-generation leader in a family business, I wish I had this book years ago. I intend to implement the Braveheart planning process to sustain a family legacy of lasting values and purpose. Thank you, Randy, for showing the way. And Randy, when we look at family businesses and businesses that people start, they rarely last as long as the bot's business has. They usually die out a lot quicker, don't they?
That's correct. By the time you get to the third generation, you only see about 3% of the businesses originally started that end up making it to the third generation. So it's pretty rare.
And some of this, even if the business is successful, can have to do with the way you leave your business to your heirs. Perhaps you're leaving it to more than one, and if you don't structure it right, it's a recipe for conflict in the family, isn't it?
It is. If you're not careful, you can set up your family for disaster. And so one of the things that we like to do when we're counseling on this transition, I'm a lawyer in addition to the other things, and so I've dealt with many estates in the front end and the back end, so I've planned them, I've also administered them. And so what you find out is how, and also other lawyers' work that I've administered after people have died, and sometimes the plans are created in such a way that they insert conflict into a family that didn't exist before. And so, as an example, we were talking off radio here before about a family that had 2 girls and a son. The son worked his whole career with the father, but at the father and mother's death, they left the business equally to the 3 kids. And within a year after the father's death, the 2 sisters had thrown their brother out of the business, and he was no longer working for the business, and yet he'd given his whole career. He was at the time like 52, and here he is 52, having worked his whole career with the family business, doing a very good job, frankly, and now he's out of a job.
How's the business doing?
The business failed.
So you would, if this was your client, you would have counseled them to plan their estate a little bit differently.
Definitely.
Sure. And
definitely.
other things too.
Yes, we would have made sure that that the plan would compensate the sisters in a different way outside of the business. And also there's some complexity in that in determining what is earned by the child that's been working in the business over the course of their career versus what is actually an inheritance or what should be given. So you've got some work to do there to determine that too.
Some of the kids are going to be interested in the business and some aren't. And so, even before you plan the exit process, just talk a little bit, Randy, about that, about how Christian business owners love all of their kids equally, want them all to succeed. Some are interested, some aren't. How do you sort of manage that dynamic?
Right. Well, one thing we do is we don't assume. And I find this problem a lot, that parents assume that their children either do or don't want to be in the business, and so they start to act that way. And they'll go down the road quite far, presuming that their son wants to take over, and he really wants to go become a doctor or something different, So we have to communicate. That's a really big deal. So we start to communicate with them, and then we interview all the members of the family. We find out what they really do want, and we help them design a plan that actually works for them. And everybody is different. We all have problems. We all have failures. We're suited for different things. And one of the things we like to do is try to help the family determine what are their unique abilities. Some people don't belong running a business, whether they're the children or not. So sometimes an employee really should have the business and not the children.
Mm-hmm. And that probably is sticky too.
Yes.
Randy, if you have a family business or you have a business and you are in your middle years, you're middle-aged, you're at the top of your game, you're running it, you're energetic, the business basically depends upon your talents and your abilities, at least you think so.
Right.
Is that a good place to be?
If you want the business to survive, it isn't, because with your death or disability, the business is done. We have an example of that. One of my clients was an architect who worked in a couple of states, very successful. He was the only person in the business that had the architectural license, though, like 27 employees. But because he had not hired other people with licenses, when he died, the business wasn't saleable. The employees figured the business was going to collapse, and so they all ran and got other jobs, and there was really nothing but a liquidation. That business made really good money, and it should have brought financial security to the family upon his death, but it did not, because he did not do his planning.
So the planning needs to be done in in the case of, just to plan in case something happened to you, but even all of us know that we're going to at some time either retire or die.
Right.
So it's almost as if you should be planning for your exit from day one, in a sense.
Yeah, we do want to do contingency planning, which is the kind of planning that would have helped this architect. But ultimately, the planning that we're trying to do is that which we'd like to get, like when we turn 65 or 75 or whatever our desire to get out is, or even if we want to work until we die, but we just want to change roles in such a way that we're not needed on a day-to-day basis, which is one of the things that makes a business worth more money and makes it saleable, frankly. As long as a business owner continues to be the key employee, if you will, those businesses, they may be saleable, but they don't get multiples very often. They tend to get one-time earnings or things like that. So if you want to have a business be saleable and have it sell for reasonable multiples, you've got to build a business that doesn't need you.
That's amazing to think. It's sort of counterintuitive to think about it until you really go through the process. That's why I enjoyed the book, because it brought sort of some common sense principles to mind about how we should be doing things. So whether you sell your business at a certain point, whether you transition it to a member of the family, whether you transition it to perhaps a key employee or some key employees, this will all affect your family and your family legacy, won't it?
It definitely will. The legacy part, from my perspective, the family part of the legacy is the most important part. So I like families to own businesses because it is also something else that binds them together. I recognize that everybody can't do it, and sometimes there aren't children that are available to take over. And then we have to start planning for a legacy, which is a different kind, and that is dealing with managing money and how do you handle a family that is no longer in business, and you handle the money in such a way though that you don't destroy the children and grandchildren. And that's a really big problem, frankly, for families that liquidate.
Yeah.
So there's some work to be done in that.
Yeah, I think also just the principles of handling money is probably part of this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. And also, let me just open up the phones, 800-351-1212. If you've got a question, we have got actually a resource here in the studio for you. If you have a business and you have some questions, you might want to call and ask Randy. You'll get some free advice. The number is 800-351-1212. He is an expert in exit planning, how to get your business ready for your exit, however that exit may happen. And we're going to talk about the nuts and bolts of it a little bit more after the program. But you can give us a call, and I don't really want comments as much as questions for Randy. That's really what we were asking for today. So, again, the number is 800-351-1212. I do want to mention we have put a new item up at our website, Take Action. And it's an action that is so extremely important, as you might have already gathered, because we have been covering on the program ever since President Obama issued his directive about transgender bathrooms. It's consumed a good portion of our programming and our topics. And certainly even before that, when the state of North Carolina actually passed a very common sense law protecting people in the bathrooms. But this administration has gone after really our civil rights law to try to change the recipients of civil rights on the basis of their gender identity, and it's unbelievable. I think if they can go into the most private parts of our lives, which is where we use a bathroom or what bathroom is used, the privacy and the security of ourselves and our children are affected by this. And it's an issue that if we don't rise up on it, we're not going to be concerned about anything. We're not going to rise up on anything. So we've given you a really easy way to take action. You can go to pointofview.net. We have a brand new Take Action item there. You press, it's right in the middle of the page. You press on Take Action. It will send a letter. It's got a letter written for you to your members of Congress. If you want to change the letter, you can, or you can send them one rewrote. This will get their attention. We need to have some congressional action on this. So join us in this Take Action item, and you can see Randy's book on the website, too. So go there, pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Point of View.
The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Penna Dexter.
I'm so glad Randy Long is in studio with me. We're talking about businesses, owning a business, running a business, having your family in the business or not, and exiting from the business. And his book is The Braveheart Exit. It just was released yesterday. And the subtitle is 7 Steps to Your Family Business Legacy. It's filled with practical information. And here's one of the other endorsements. This is from Rod Martin. And he was 60 plus. Did he start that group? PayPal. Okay, he's with PayPal. Okay, Rod Martin. Randy shows both why and how, but crucially and distinctly, he also shows how to include and develop one's family along the way as you're running your business. In an entrepreneurial age, Randy's book is timely, different, needful, and outstanding. Well, we've got some calls, so let's go there, Randy. Let's go to Jim listening in Michigan. Sorry, WLJN. Hi, Jim. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, sure. It sounds like a great book. I definitely want to buy it. I am a successful piano technician in northern Michigan, and I have entered into a partnership with a young married guy in my church who's also the choir director and music minister, and I'm teaching him piano tuning, and then I pay him to work for me, and then we're in the process of seeing an attorney and getting it all drawn up so that he can buy the business when I retire, when I hit 70. Mm. And he's a really strong Christian and just a joy to work with. And, this was a gift from God. This
tell us what your question is.
The question is, am I doing anything wrong? Am I messing up in some way,
Okay.
I'm teaching him the business, and we have a non-compete clause and that sort of thing.
Yeah, let's talk about the generic principles behind transitioning a business to employees. First of all, what we like to do is we like to make sure that the owner stays in control of the business until the risk is taken off of the table. And so typically in the model that we would use, we would do something like selling a portion of the business, which the earnings from the business help him basically buy you out. So the business is sort of buying you out as you go along. And then after you reach a certain point, you can then allow him essentially to borrow the difference if he's capable, if the business is generating enough income and background essentially to borrow the difference. Then you can have him buy you out and your risk is over and you're out. But, the other, keeping control can be accomplished in a couple of different ways. One of them is, for instance, if I created an LLC or corporation and I had non-voting stock, I could sell more of the business to him in the non-voting side, but still control essentially by keeping the voting stock, or at least 51% of it. So you can transition equity without transitioning control, and then allowing him to grow along with you. Paying him, of course, for his work will then allow him to have money to pay you back for it. I know that seems to be circular at some level, but you want to also get some counsel on the tax side to make sure that you're only paying the tax one time. And this radio show is not. I don't have enough time to go into the tax issues with you, but make sure that you are working with somebody that also understands tax and not just business sales.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, Jim, thank you for your call.
Yeah, you've been a big help. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So, Randy, one of the things that you stress in your book is that the best way to do things often is the gradual, progressive way, where you're grooming someone.
That's right.
Or people. And also to just let go of reins. It's almost like when we raise kids, we let go of the reins and then we see how it goes.
That's right.
You quote one of our favorite presidents when you talk about that, don't you?
Yeah, I do. One of them, Reagan, of course, said trust but verify. And the idea here is that you want to transition gradually, giving them more responsibility. And when an employee is buying out, we also like to set up criteria for them to reach so that we have either sales goals or gross revenue goals or production goals or something that lets us see that while they're buying us out, the business is also growing, and we're able to see them in operation, to see them be successful, and knowing then that they'll be able to be successful going forward because they've worked at it and they've proven that they can, as opposed to too often what I see is people will come to see me and say that, I sold my business to an employee and, he's not making payments, the business is failing, and now what do I do? Well, that's a little late.
Too late?
Yes, ma'am. So that's my point about this, is that we want to keep control until your risk is off the table. And that design comes up in a number of different ways depending on, your own circumstances. But generically, that is the principle when you're selling to employees or even kids potentially if you want to sell to children.
Yeah, and I think with your kids, it's even because you love your kids, you want them to succeed. It might be, in a sense, and you also know their faults, and so it might be a little easier to trust but verify with your kids because there's so many factors sort of leading you to do that.
Right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are taking your calls here at Point of View, 800-351-1212. Again, my guest is Randy Long. His book is The Braveheart Exit. You can find out more about it at pointofview.net, and it's a real practical handbook. I think this book is going to do well when people start learning about it. Let's go to Mary in Texas. She's got a question. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I am a second generation that runs a family business along with my husband. Just this week, we have decided to sell the business. There is no third generation that's interested. We're an S Corp. We've been around for 45 years. My dad is the single stockholder.
Okay.
He wants to sell the business and then give the money to me and my husband. And I don't know exactly that can work.
Yeah, you have some opportunities here, which I would strongly counsel you to seek some tax help here. You've got the possibility. I don't know you might not want to tell me what the value of the business is, but if the business is worth more than $10 million, I'm sorry,
2 to 3.
Ma'am?
It'd be about 2 to 3 million.
Okay,
2 to 3 million.
Okay, that helps simplify things a little bit. But are you the only child?
No, I do have a sister. She wants no part of it.
Okay.
So I know that's what my dad said. You take the business and the proceeds from that, and then when he passes on, he will leave, I guess, his estate to my sister.
Okay. Yeah. So I would counsel him, of course, to make sure that he has sought legal counsel, and the business is a tad small, probably. You said the business is worth $2 million. Who told you that?
Well, it's just kind of based on what I've spoken to a couple of people in the industry.
Okay. Well, in general, one of the first things in our process, of course, is to determine who we want to sell to, when we want to sell, and what we need from the sale. And part of that has to do with understanding what the value of the business is and obtaining. I like to get a market appraisal done by either a business broker or a mergers and acquisition firm, so that I get a true feeling for what the business is worth. And then, if possible, I like it to be run in what's called a controlled auction. Have you ever heard that term?
No.
Okay. So for you to be able to maximize the benefit of this, you need to handle the sale well. And you only get one shot. Most business owners only sell one business. And so part of the reason I wrote this book is because there is a huge number of business owners that are going to be transitioning out of their businesses in the next 5 to 10 years. And because the baby boomers are just running through, as we speak. And so we want to make sure that we do this well. And the principles within the book set forth things like this. So it might be helpful to you, honestly, if you would read the book. You'll learn some really important things that may make you a lot of money.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, then. We will do that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mary. And, I might mention, Randy, you stress this throughout the book, and that is the depending on the size of the business, certain advisors are necessary when you sell it. You need more advisors the bigger the business is.
That's
for
correct.
More implications. But even with the size of her business, she should definitely have some professional advisors.
Yeah, she's big enough now where she gets to take advantage of a business. She probably needs a business lawyer and an estate planner and either a business broker or mergers and acquisitions firm, depending on what the value of the business turns out to be. But she can do it well if she hurries.
We're taking your calls, 800-351-1212. We've had some really good questions from my guest, Randy Long. Again, go to pointofview.net. You can check out and find out more about Randy and also his book, The Braveheart Exit. We'll be right back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. Randy Long is my guest, and we are talking about The Braveheart Exit. It's his new book, and it's a really helpful book. And Randy, we just had a caller who, she's in the position where she and her husband and dad may be selling their business, and we recommended she get the book. We really do, because there are so many pitfalls she could face in the situation she's in, and that's true of anyone transitioning from their business, isn't it?
Yes, that's very true. So it's a nice little guidebook for them. Most business owners will do better if they implement the process instead of treating this like a transaction. If most lawyers and accountants will treat an exit as a sale, but if you treat it as a transition, which is a process-driven like ours is, it really is transformational for the family.
So definitely the book will be helpful, and as much of the book that could be implemented into a business would be great. But we also mentioned advisors and getting help and advice. We are anyone who owns a business is good at their business, but they're not necessarily good at all these other areas, financial and legal. And
nobody is.
Except you, Randy, you have credentials in many of them, but that's why we have you on the program. That's why you've written the book, The Braveheart Exit. Let's take a call here. We've got Jack in the state of Texas. Hi, Jack. Thanks for calling.
Hi, thank you.
What's your question?
My question, my wife and I, we have an oil field company here in Texas, and we've got a young son together, and then I have two older children that are in their 20s. From previous relationships. My daughter, who's the oldest, is going to come work with us at our company. We have some concerns because of the amount of money that comes through an oil field company of her expectations of what she'll be receiving later in life. How do we address the two situations with our older children that don't really have a strong relationship with us and not make them feel alienated because our young son together, who's 5, will ultimately inherit most everything. But how do you address the previous children with younger children, your younger son?
Yeah, so this question comes up fairly often, which is dealing with the kids that work in the business versus those that don't, and how do you treat them fairly or equitably, if you will. Fairness is not necessarily equality, and each of the situations do have to be dealt with separately, but in general, I think that there is a rite of passage, if you will, that the person that works in the business and gives their life to it should expect some sort of return on their life investment that is not to be considered an inheritance, but actually an earned position. That's one thing. So I'm just going to give you some principles here. Secondly, I also think that you should be careful about sharing too soon any information about inheritance, because my experience is that things change, circumstances change, and also there's no reason to plant things that may alienate your family, which may or may not even come true later. So I don't typically talk about inheritance too early with children, even though the planning is done, because it can turn out to be a disincentive also for those that are working or that should be working because they think they already have it made, that sort of thing. So there's some real wisdom and thinking that needs to go into how you design this in such a way that you don't overpay your kid when they start, as an example. You treat them and pay them a fair value for their work. let them earn the right to the money so that they can appreciate who they are. And you have to treat a kid that's an employee just like an employee, or else the rest of the employees are not going to respect them in their position of leadership later. So you've got to do some thinking about this, and you've got to set up the kid for success instead of for failure. And there's some wisdom involved in that. And we talk about that actually fairly extensively in the book.
Fantastic. Great wisdom here. There's one other question, sort of a big category of questions that I haven't really gotten to. So I just want to ask you very quickly, Randy, and that is about if you were to sell your business, how would you value it? I mean, I think there are a lot of things that go into it, and you asked our caller about the value. She didn't really have an answer. That's because it's hard to value your business, isn't it?
Yes, it is. General rules aren't generally good. So when you're valuing businesses, because they're individual, and what makes businesses valuable have to do with management teams and processes and things that are unique to that particular business. And so there are categories, if you will, of industries, but I don't like to go by the categories. That's the reason why we always get an M&A firm to work with us and to help us get a market valuation based on what is being sold in the market and comparisons. They all have really deep databases to compare with. Just got off the phone last night to order another one. So we do these a lot, and valuation is a big deal, and I would not presume that you know what your business is worth based on some sort of norm.
Wow, there's so many individual factors. And I would think, Randy, that if you are thinking of selling your business and then living on that money the rest of your life, that the amount you sell the business for might depend on that, or how long you keep the business, how you get ready the business for sale, all of that.
That's right. So depending on the worth of the business, like I mentioned to the young lady before, if the business is likely worth more than $10 million, there's some real tax planning that can be done. If you've got 3 to 5 years, depending on the strategy, we need at least that long to save estate taxes, and even to organize the sale in such a way that we can minimize the income taxes. So if you can sell a business typically within a year or two, but if you wait until then to start your planning, you've left some options off the table that could have saved substantial amounts of money. Wow.
Okay. So that's important. And I guess another area, Randy, where you really need some advisors and helpers.
We all need them. Yeah. I use lots of them.
The show Shark Tank has gotten so popular, and it's fun. It's pretty educational to look at that and see what they think about when they think about the value of a business, or what it will bring going forward.
That's right. You need to look at your business through the eyes of a buyer, not through the eyes of your customer.
Well, Randy, thank you. So I'm sorry that our time is gone. This is just a huge topic. And I'm glad you wrote the book, because there's definitely, just judging from the calls we've been getting, there's a need out there. So I hope the book does very well. Perhaps we can revisit this after, a few months and see how it's going. And, our listeners will, I'm sure, still be interested. Many of them will have gotten the book by then. So thank you very much for coming in and being part of the program today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
That's Randy Long. And again, go to pointofview.net. It's the Braveheart exit. You can click on his picture. You can click on the picture of the book. You can find out more. And there's just a little summary, too, that you can read just to get an idea of what you're getting if you get the book. Well, ladies and gentlemen, another place to go when you get to pointofview.net.